كما باركت على إبراهيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم، أما بعد. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يخرج من بطونها شراب مختلف ألوانه فيه شفاء للناس إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. Respected brothers and elders, mothers and sisters in Islam, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us in the company of the righteous in this world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise us amongst the righteous on the day of Qiyamah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our lives with mercy and rahmah, as all of us are in the need of the rahmah and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ayat of the Quran, it's a portion of an ayat of the Quran. This is from the 14th Sipara, the 14th Juz. And the surah, the chapter itself is Surah An-Nahl, which is the 16th surah in the order of recitation. And this is the portion of the 69th ayat of the Quran. If you remember a few nights ago, we talked about Surah An-Nahl being a surah which is also known as the chapter of the blessings, where there are so many different types of blessings and rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that have been mentioned. And in this very particular ayat of the Quran, and for many of us, we have heard this ayat many, many times in its commentary, but there are a few important points from the seerah that I would want myself and all of us to take back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions to us, يَخْرُجُ مِن بُطُونِهَا شَرَابٌ مُخْتَلِفٌ. From the bellies of these bees, and an-nahl in Arabic refers to the bees. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that comes from their bellies, شَرَابٌ مُخْتَلِفٌ, liquids or forms of honey that is different in color. And this is 1400 years ago telling us the different color and forms of honey that are provided and different textures itself. And not only this, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions fihi shifa'un linnas. But the major portion which the ayat of the Quran emphasizes upon, the central theme of this is that there is shifa and health and cure in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places within these bees. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, indeed, these are from amongst the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who ponder, who reflect over the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we have spoken about this previously, as a reminder, there are two places in the Quran where the word shifa or health or cure is used, or it's attached to something. One, of course, is this ayat of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the liquid or the honey that comes from the bees as a source of shifa and health. Another thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to in the Quran as shifa is the Quran itself. The Quran itself is referred to as shifa, the health and cure for our internal and of course even external needs as well, from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The point that I want to share from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not only that we read this ayat of the Quran, but how do we truly extract its benefits. There was a great scholar of his time, his name was Sheikh Yusuf Kandilwi rahimahullah ta'ala, great scholar of his time. In the commentary of the hadith, the famous hadith, where if you remember, a man came and said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my brother's stomach is hurting. And the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, give him honey. And when honey was given, the stomach did not feel better. The brother didn't feel better. And it was asked for the second time, give him honey. Gave again, but did not feel better. And the third time again. And then the fourth time, Rasulullah said, كَذَّبَ بَطْنَ أَخِيكَ, that your brother's stomach could be lying, but the words of Allah could never be wrong. And when he gave that time, his brother began to feel better. In the commentary of this very hadith, he brings, Shaykh Yusuf Kandalwi rahmatullah alayhi, brings this very hadith in the chapter of, not the chapter of adwiya or medicine from the Prophet ﷺ, but he brings this hadith in the chapter of yaqeen and tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the essence of the ayats of the Quran is that the rulings exist, but what's required behind all of this is the yaqeen and the tawakkul and the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to share this hadith with you. And this hadith is a hadith which has slight weakness. This hadith itself has been mentioned by Imam al-Tabrani rahmatullah alayhi and Ibn Abi Sunnah in Kitab al-Dua and other kitabs. Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi and others, Ibn Hajar has mentioned this hadith to be weak, but strong, good enough to be practiced, meaning it's not fabrication or it's not mawdu or anything like that. So there's a hadith in which it is mentioned that someone came to Abu Darda radiallahu anhu and said, "Oh Abu Darda, your house is about to burn as there is a fire that is coming close to your house." So Abu Darda radiallahu anhu is in the masjid, he's engaged in his ibadah, and he says, "No, it's not going to happen. The fire is not coming to my house." So someone again came anxiously and said, "Abu Darda, the fire is moving very quickly towards that direction. You should do something about it." He says, "I'm okay. My house is not going to get burnt." So he came for the third time and says, "Abu Darda, I know this is a warning that the fire is coming very, very quickly and rapidly, and it's not going to look for anything. It's going to really hurt." So he says, "I'm okay." The fourth time this person came and said the fire was coming and it stopped right before coming to your house, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely protected you. And then he asked, "Why were you so calm?" Meaning, what was the reason that you were so calm in what I had informed you of? Like, you didn't panic. He says, "Because I heard a dua from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, anyone who leaves their homes and recites the dua and says, Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta alayka tawakkaltu wa anta rabbul arshil kareem, ma sha Allahu kan wa ma lam yasha lam yakun, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, a'lamu anna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir wa anna Allah qad ahata bi kulli shay'in ilma." I've heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, whoever recites this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes a promise to protect them and their belongings and their property. He said, "I already read the dua, and this is the promise from the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." He said, "The world can change from its location, but the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could never be wrong." So the essence of yaqeen that the Sahaba had behind the promises of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I've already mentioned this incident 2 nights ago, that how Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said that I was rushing towards my house after the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to see if the dua reaches first or I reach my house first. Right? This was the yaqeen and the tawakkul and the trust that the Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in had. So, respected brothers and elders, from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the biggest components that we find in the lives of Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in was the yaqeen on the words of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It may seem at that moment, again, mushahidats, witnesses, and all the things could be against, but the words of Allah and His Rasul can never be wrong. And that's why Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu became Siddiq Akbar. And ulama have mentioned something so amazing, that Abu Jahl received the news of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj from the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he rejected. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu received the news of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj from Abu Jahl, and he accepted, because it was the news of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was the incident that occurred to the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the larger picture, I want to go back from this very ayat of the Quran, which is teaching us that Allah has created so many ni'mah and blessings for us. Within that, Allah has created honey that is a means of shifa and cure for us. But the essence of this is that the right yaqeen is required to directly benefit from the words of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the essence that we all need to really create within our own lives. That today we read and today we believe, but how much is the true yaqeen within my own hearts? If I recite the dua, Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, leaving my house, what's my yaqeen? What's my trust in the words of Allah, that Allah will protect us? So, brothers and elders, from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find one continuous thing from the lives of all companions, that not only that they listened to and understood the words of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they trusted and they had yaqeen more than what their eyes could see. More than what their eyes could see, the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant for them. And that's how their worlds changed, right? Their eyes could go wrong. And they used to themselves say that our eyes could see something wrong, but but the words of Rasulullah can never be wrong themselves. Right? And that's the yaqeen that needs to be created within our lives as well. So we truly ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to also, reflect over the promises of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to be able to benefit directly from the Quran and the Sunnah. Again, this is the 14th Sibara, the 14th Juz, Surah number 16, Surah An-Nahl, verse number 69, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the extraction of honey from the bellies of these honey. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in different forms and colors, fihi shifa'un linnas, for what Allah has put cure inside of them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, inna fi dhalika la ayat. This is indeed from amongst the signs of Allah for that qawm liqawmin yatafakkarun, for those who will be able to ponder. So truly ponder over the blessings of Allah. May Allah give us tawfiq and yaqeen on the words of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdihi.